Pictures by email just to him. City center before the bombing. Before the bombing. And this is the city center of Nijmegen after the bombing. And so we are standing here. So it's the grace of our. So they all survived the bombing.
They were wearing the scarf.
They were wearing the scarf. Yes. So this is the when Nijmegen became the city of the and it took half a year for the whole thing was celebrated. So because it set a fire, what was left didn't survive. So the chapel of the hospital, this was also part of the hospital. This was newly built. Parish ministry.
Yes,
And they were looking for a parish close by the convent. And this was an Augustinian church built by the Augustinians. But the Augustinians were having a lot of vocations and they moved to another part of the city. And the Carmelites took over the church and the parish in 1933. Augustinians built this church in the 19th century. But it was taken over by the Protestants in the Reformation. And the Augustinians built this church, and the tower was rebels. And they made a plan for Titus to fly when the Germans wanted to take him. So they told Titus, so when the Germans want to arrest you, a brother Carmelite will open the door, and then we have thought of something so that you can go through the back door, and we have this and this place for you to hide. But then Titus said, well, my dear brothers, no way I will escape, because when I do what you want me to do, I am convinced that they will take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you until I will turn up and to be arrested. So they were very much aware that he was in danger. So for 12 years, and here he worked on the Catholic Encyclopedia. So in 3 to 4 years they published a big Catholic encyclopedia with I think 30 volumes, and Titus wrote hundreds of lemmas in this encyclopedia. It was here that he worked on the preparation of the Marian Congress in 1932. It was here that he prepared his lectures on Carmelite mysticism for the United States. And it was here that he also wrote his lemma for the Dictionnaire de Spiritualité on Les Carmes. So this was really the center of his academic life. And the university buildings were also in this area of the city. So he had to walk that way where he had his institute, and he had to walk that way for the aula and the other institute. So it were all just houses taken over by the university, and they made them available for lectures. And the library was also in the city center. Yes. So at the start of this house, he organized the first Congress on mysticism, and Dr. Strakke, Rob Vase was mentioning Dr. Strakke, was the honored guest on this Congress. So the Jesuits came from Antwerp to celebrate the start of the new Carmelite community. So it were the Jesuits who joined the Carmelites of Nijmegen, and they started their house with a congress on mysticism. I checked if it was on Rootsbroek, but it was on Dutch mysticism. and Titus spoke about the mysticism of Carmel. He just published his book on the Carmelite saints, and in 1934 there was the second Congress on Mysticism, and then it was the relation between Rusbroek and Teresa of Avila. So he gave courses on Rusbroek and Spanish mystics, and second Congress was on this topic. So I'm very eager to learn more about what he said on this Congress. So this text, do you have this text already?
Not everything.
No. So there's still a lot to be discovered. But I'm very glad that one of my friends, Lutz Zwart, has continued this study on Rusbroek, Eckhart, and the Flemish mystics and the way they influenced Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross. So it's maybe good to know for you that Geert Grote visited John of Rusbroek in Brussels, and he translated Rusbroek into Latin. And Geert Grote translated Rusbroek into Latin, and that's how it could be read by the Spanish and Italians. The thinking of Rusbroek came also to Italy and Spain because of the Latin translation of Geert Grote. He lived from 1340 to 1384, and Rusbroek from 1300 to 1380. So they were contemporaries, but Geert Grote died of pest at the age of 44. So the house was rebuilt after the war. So this is the post-war convent, and the building of this area, a new convent and a new church were built. And the church, this is the church tower, and the church went up to there with 1,400 seats. 1,400 seats. It was closed in 1380, and in 1980 and in 1978, the friars left the house and they opted for smaller communities. So they split up in 4 communities. They were with 25 students, older friars, very old friars, and the students didn't like the living apart together in a big community. So they had permission of the council to start a small community in the midst of the people, and that's how it happens, and that's the reason the Carmelite history of Nijmegen. So now we have parish community, a student community, a community with the very old friars who were the last to leave, and well, student community was too small, so they came another. Yeah. What is it? And this is the street housing plan. But let's walk to Titus Brandsma Chapel. Square. You see here a chapel. Yes. So this wall was left because the printing press was behind, and it was kind of keeping the noise away from this apartment. But now the printing press is somewhere else as well. So the Carmelites were faced with a popular devotion to Titus Brandsma. So Titus Brandsma was the face of the Catholic resistance to the Nazi ideology. So already during the war, his writings from prison, My Cell and his last writing, were printed in 10,000s and spread all over the country. So there was a popular devotion for Titus Brandsma, and the Carmelites had to relate to this. And the idea started to create a chapel at the place where he was taken away. But the Carmelites were not very much in favor of creating a chapel for Titus, because they was one of them. They knew him, especially the non-ordained brothers resisted the idea of a beatification or a canonization, because Titus was very generous. So people came at the door, so for food or for Professor Titus, and the brothers had to make coffee, or they had to prepare some bread, and they had to fill the fridge again when the fridge was empty, because the friars had to eat as well. So there were mixed feelings about, he was just a human being with human features. So the Carmelites decided not to cooperate in the creation of a chapel, and they were more for the option of continuing the academic work of Titus Brandsma. So they really put energy, money, personnel in the foundation of the Titus Brandsma Institute, because we want to continue his passion, his work, and not his person, because as Carmelites we have no founder, but we have the concept of standing before the Lord's face, and not we have not to put a person in between God and ourselves. So what happened was that a journalist called Louis Frequin was the driving force behind the creation of this chapel at this place. And Louis Frequin was a journalist, the father of Willebroek Frequin, a famous Dutch journalist nowadays. And Louis Frequin was a journalist working for the Gelderlander as well, and he knew Titus personally, but he was active in the resistance as well, and he was taken a prisoner in the war, and he was sentenced to death. And he was in the death row, and he was. Are these cars?
They're waiting for us.
So he remembered Titus when he was in the death row, preparing himself for being executed. And he was very Catholic, so he thought, well, I want to keep my faith while facing those who are going to kill me, and who want to stand upright. And he started a novena for Titus Brandsma, because his wife told him that she thought Titus was a holy person. And then on the 9th day in prison, the doors were opened, and he was taken out of his cell to be transferred to another prison in Arnhem for further investigations and interrogations. So he went to Arnhem, and Arnhem was bombed as well by our friends, the Americans. And then the prison was hit, and Louis was able to escape. And he had the conviction that it was through the intercession of Titus Brandsma that he survived and that he was reunited with his children and his wife, and he devoted himself to the commemoration of Titus Brandsma. He wrote pamphlets and he collected the money for building this chapel, and this chapel is inaugurated in 1960, within 20 years after the death of Titus, and the architecture is the architecture of a prison camp. So we went inside, did we? Or not? No. Okay. So there are two walls, and the place for the altar has exactly the same size as his prison cell in Scheveningen. So where the priest is saying mass, where the altar was standing, was exactly the prison cell in Scheveningen. So the Carmelites has been saying mass here because we had the convent here. But then in 1980 the church was closed and all the friars died. So, and the devotion for Titus grew. So in 1985 he was beatified. So the need for a bigger place to commemorate Titus grew. And and also the secularization grew. And the Jesuits told us, well, can you take over one of our churches? It's Kees Wijman, Hein Blommestein, who were the creative forces to restore the church into a Titus Brandsma memorial. So in 1998, the ashes and the image of Titus were transferred to our place, and the city council the city council took over this chapel, and they intended to turn it down because they wanted to make a parking garage here in this area. But the city council changed and the ideas changed, so the chapel remained empty for many years, 5-6 years, and then the homeless problem in this city became bigger and bigger. So there were two missionary priests who took care of the homeless, and they asked the city council, can we use this chapel for saying goodbye, for a little funeral when one of the homeless dies. And so now it's the chapel for the homeless. And in 2017 we commemorated the death of Titus, 75 years his death, and they made this painting of Titus. And so now it's the chapel for the homeless, and I think it's a miracle that this is now functioning for people who have no home, and they are given a piece of bread several days a week. And our brother Simon from Indonesia is going every Wednesday from Boxmeer to be here with the homeless. So that's a great service he is giving now. So we keep in touch with those who are in charge of the chapel, and we have now 2 lay persons ministering with the homeless. And they, when the chapel is open, we are always invited to go in with a group of pilgrims to see the chapel and to talk to the homeless. So that's the first Titus Brandsma chapel. And now at our square we have the second Titus Brandsma church, and it's a miracle that it's growing. So the devotion is also growing. So people from all over the country come now to our church for lighting a candle or for just visiting the exhibition we have in our churches. And you see here this monument. It's a broken gun, supposed to be the symbol of a prison camp. Okay? It's important to see.
Merong nurse, grocery, may injection.
Di sila Chris.
Nag-aaral ka pa.
Oo, inuman kami dyan.
Okay. Yes, please. The Gelderlander was in the time of Titus. So he just walked out of his convent and he could talk to the director of the Gelderlander. And we can say that he was a self-made journalist. We will hear more about it later during the Congress. But he really was convinced also that papers and journals were very good for the development of the people. So he wrote 150 articles on mysticism in the Gelderlander for the local population of Nijmegen. And I've been reading these articles. Well, you can't present them to nowadays citizens of Nijmegen. They are quite sophisticated and specialized, but his readership was in love with his articles. So he wrote beautiful articles on our spiritual heritage. That was the column he wrote. So I leave it with this, and we walk up back to the church, and on our way back we will pass the Peter Canisius Church, where the statue of Our Lady of Nijmegen is kept, and where the shoes of Peter Canisius are behind the altar. So when the church is open, it's closed now, but when you find time just to walk in the city center, walk in the church, Titus is commemorated there, Professor Radboud is commemorated there, there's a plaque to commemorate the Congress of 1932. So that's where this Marian spirit came alive very much. Yes, so we walk up this way.